Well, Panther fans, you probably told yourself there's no way this season could get off to any worse of a start. Well, it has. Derrick Brown may be out for the rest of the season. What does that mean for him and Carolina moving forward? We'll talk about it right here on this emergency episode of the Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And I am live right now here on YouTube, like I am following every Carolina Panthers game. And anytime there is big breaking news like we have on today's show, either at me or DM me over on Julian Council to get your questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag on the show. And we will go ahead and get into it right now. Reports coming from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero that Panthers Pro Bowl defensive end defensive tackle, Derrick Brown suffered a potential season-ending knee injury in Sunday's loss to the Saints. Per sources, the meniscus injury will require surgery, which will determine the exact timeline. A brutal blow in week 1. Yeah, no kidding, Tom. This is a brutal blow for the Carolina Panthers. And first and foremost, the individual Derrick Brown, who signed a massive contract back during the offseason. So I think about him first before I think about what this means for the team, because this is a guy who has worked his tail off for this organization and has continuously watched them make bad decision after bad decision, but yet he was rewarded with a 4-year, $96 million deal. And I know this is absolutely not how he wanted to start off his beginning of being one of the faces of this organization with that deal. So first and foremost, I just want to focus on Derrick Brown, what this means for him, feel bad for him, his family, that they're in a situation where he may not play for the rest of the season. Now, getting aside from the Derrick Brown of it all, looking for Carolina and what this means for the Panthers, I mean, this is a team that could not stop the Saints on their first 9 possessions from scoring with Derrick Brown on the field. This is a team that gave 180 yards on the ground with Derrick Brown on the field. What are they going to do now without Derrick Brown out there on the playing field? They were likely going to lose anyways and continue to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL because of the teardown that they did this past offseason. And I was having a conversation with Buddy via text message last night. He was talking about, man, they screwed Ejiro Evero. David Tepper held this man hostage, wouldn't let him leave to potentially take the 49ers job or take the Packers job. He was going to stay here in Carolina, even though he doesn't deem him worthy of being a head coach. He loves his talent enough as a defensive play caller and coordinator, but does not think that he can be a leader of men and be his head coach. He got screwed in this situation where they got rid of Burns, they got rid of Luvu. Now, he didn't really use Jeremy Chin anyways. Dante Jackson, which probably made sense. It's probably time to move on there. But it's not like they were in a situation where they brought in a great replacement. Now, Mike Jackson played well on Sunday, but Ejiro got screwed. And the one guy at least he had, he felt like he could count on, Derrick Brown, is now done for at least a foreseeable future. Once he has the surgery, we'll find out how long he's out. To me, it feels like it's season ending. Why? The Panthers look terrible on defense on Sunday in New Orleans. Certainly, they'll get a little bit better. They're not going to give up 9 straight scores every week, I would think, in the NFL this season. And Bryce Young also didn't play well. The offense looked inept in large part because their quarterback was jittery in the pocket. He was inaccurate. That led to 2 interceptions. Mingo can't hold on to the football. Calamity of errors on offense, defense, and also on special teams where they look terrible there. Thank you to the first-year effort of Tracy Smith and Darren Bates as the coordinators here on special teams of Carolina. That's an issue the Panthers haven't really had when they had Chris Tabor the last 2 years, but now they're right back to having Chase Blackburn be their special teams coordinator and just looking like one of the worst special teams units in the NFL. So all 3 of those combined, this is a team, based on what we saw, 1 game sample size, certainly, but we can't sit here and look at it in a vacuum when we have watched this team, a lot of these players, be completely inept and not make plays and win games over the last 4 or 5 seasons since David Tepper has been the Panthers owner. So based on what we saw last year, what we've seen in the past, and just really the rhetoric coming out of Carolina where they were trying to temper expectations, it does not look like this is going to head towards the Panthers having a successful season to the where Derrick Brown comes back in late November and they go on a playoff push. It certainly is possible, because anything is possible, apparently. Not true, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Well, looking at this, I just have a hard time. The Panthers are looking at another rough season. They're out of it in November. Why bring back Derrick Brown? You have a massive financial investment in him, 4 years, $96 million. And looking over the cap.com, that number doesn't even start until next year. So that contract does not kick in until a year from now. You saw the 4 years starting in 25 and ending after the 2028 season. If Brown is not healthy, the team's not in it, no reason to put him out there. And I'm looking at this position group right now, trying to figure out, just looking at the rest of it. Like, you brought in A'Shawn Robinson. I felt like he made a couple of decent plays yesterday. He did get a lot of pressure. Not a lot of pressure. He got pressure on Derek Carr on that opening touchdown that went to Rashid Shaheed, where there was a bust in the secondary. Felt like he was probably fine, but he wasn't. I mean, the whole defensive line was terrible. Like, Shai Tuttle, he didn't do anything from what I was able to see yesterday. So those are the two guys who are now going to be dependent upon to really step up while Derrick Brown is out. And that may be for the season. That may be just for a month or two. We'll find out soon enough. And I'm doing this before Dave Canales even spoken to the media. I don't know what exactly he's going to tell us that's going to give us any news. As he said, he's got Pelissero's report says you got until they have the surgery. We don't know what the timeline is, but we do know Shai Tuttle, A'Shawn Robinson, those guys are going to be first men up. Then I would imagine like Nick Thurman, who did show some signs of being a solid player last year, he'll likely step into that role as a starter. LeBron Ray was inactive yesterday in favor of Jaden Peavy, who they signed from the practice squad to the active roster on Saturday ahead of the season opener in New Orleans. Those are your 5. And got to look down at the practice squad to see who else they have. And they have TJ Smith. That would make sense to sign TJ Smith to the active roster. He was somebody who rotated in a lot with the first team throughout the preseason and throughout training camp. And I was surprised just based on what I had seen from a guy who looked pretty productive, had sacks in both the first 2 preseason games against New England and the Jets respectively. Felt like he was going to make the team, did not make the team, but he's still here on the practice squad, which basically is him being on the team, of course. So I'd guess that he likely is going to get at least standard elevations. They can only do 3 of those before he has to be signed. But I guess they probably would just go ahead and sign him to the active roster. And they have the top waiver claim. And this is one of the benefits to having it. The Panthers have it for this week, next week, and the week after that. So the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, and they can go see who's out there, who they like. They can go look at practice squads, see what players are not being protected this week and moving forward, and see if they can come in and help them out. But they're not going to replace Derrick Brown. It's just not going to happen. Just like they're not going to replace a guy like J.C. Horn. He's irreplaceable on this team. And we look at all the injuries this team could potentially suffer, and they suffer the one that they just could ill afford to lose, and that is Derrick Brown, the best player on that defense. And yeah, there's potential that JC can be the best player on the defense. He has not been available. Derrick Brown has been out there, and that's what's led the Panthers to give him this deal. And for the team to have the respect that they have for him, yeah, it's tough. That is a rough loss, man. And I don't really know what else to say other than this sucks. The season couldn't even get off the ground without the Panthers getting embarrassed in New Orleans. And now they lose their best player to a meniscus injury and possibly for the rest of the season. I think it will be season ending because I just don't think, based on what we saw yesterday, this team is going to be in contention for him to come back. And also, like, he hasn't even had his contract kick in. You're paying a lot of money for this guy. Just take it easy. Don't rush him back out there. Let it be done. Maybe they still are able to win 5 or 6 games like we all had hoped they could do this year. Even with that, no reason to bring him back. Just, this is it. As far as I'm concerned with Derrick Brown this season in Carolina. Tough break for Carolina, tough break for Brown first and foremost. And we'll see what they do from here. Not sure what they can do other than try to bring some guys in to supplement the talent that's lost. But they already have a massive void in talent across the roster. We saw that on defense, especially yesterday. offensively, I feel like they had guys who were open, just quarterback didn't hit them. And that's a problem that has to be fixed immediately, knowing that now you lost your best defensive player and the defense was already terrible to begin with based off of 1 week. So that's going to wrap up. I guess I got to do this quick ad read just to pay the bills before I leave here, even though that's all I have to say. Bear with me, and you guys can probably just pop out because I'm done. PrizePicks. Let's go ahead and talk about that for a second before I leave here. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. I guess I'll look at the comments here. As I don't typically do this, but I'll go ahead and look at it. We got Damien saying this sucks so bad. It does. Requiem 2 wins suddenly went from the floor to an unattainable ceiling. I don't know. The defense was going to be rough. They were already rough with Derrick Brown. I guess it's going to, I'm wondering how much worse can it really get when you can't stop a team on 9 consecutive drives? And until they put in the backups, and you weren't stopping to run with, is it going to go from 180 yards given up to 230? Is that what it's going to be? And the Chargers ran the ball well in that game against the Raiders on Sunday. I know the majority of the yardage that they had on the ground all came in the second half from J.K. Dobbins, but does it matter? They ran the ball well. I got Comrade 10. Well, there goes any hope whatsoever. Hope he recovers quickly and without lingering issues. Mr. CM23, absolutely devastating. Clayton Cribb saying even if Bryce sucks. Dan Morgan, remember the guy who was an assistant to Fitterer, and Canales already said they didn't expect much from this year. Add to that Bryce is only year 2. We traded up to get him because our enormous ego owner wanted to, and so upset about Bryce. We need to sit Bryce Young for the rest of the season. I'm gonna do a full episode talking about people wanting to bench Bryce and all that. I just think makes no sense at all. They gave up a ton to go get the guy. And you're not going to bail after 1 week when you hired Dave Canales literally to work with him. It's just, let's all be adults here and understand how stupid that is. Even if you don't think he's good, what good is that going to do now? You sit out Bryce Young, what are you going to do? Because if you think if you're cooked now with Derrick Brown out, what good is that going to do? All right, hey, Andy Dalton, because Andy Dalton's in the team's future plans. Come on, man. Lloyd Rayner, 0-17 loading. Let's see. Marcus Stringfield, I think it's time to trust Sheriff to be that man. To make some noise. It feels like, you're going to need some of these younger guys. Like Eku Leota, he had 4 tackles yesterday. He got washed away in a couple of those runs. If you notice, they weren't running to the Jadeveon Clowney side. They were running to the other side because they knew they could make mincemeat out of Leota and out of Sheriff. And I think Sheriff actually was kind of more on Clowney's side, but either they could go through Johnson and Leota. They weren't worried about those guys in the run game, and rightfully so, as they ran over them throughout the game. But he did have 3 tackles for loss and a sack in that game. But you're going to need dudes to step up on the outside. Oh, man. We got Brad as a fan of both the Panthers and Wolfpack. It has been such a deflating weekend of sports. I mean, if you thought State was going to win against Tennessee, that's on you, bro. Shockwave 43, did we have a run game yesterday? No, we didn't try to run. I know the Saints had a run game. James Blackwell, this is devastating news. Absolutely is. Let's see. Who are we picking in the draft? That's going to be, this is my nightmare. I put that out there on Twitter. People were asking me immediately after the Panthers got off to a bad start. Hey, so who are we picking in the draft? And I don't want to talk about the draft. I just wish this team could be just serious for 1 season, so I wouldn't have people asking me to talk about the NFL draft, which I absolutely hate talking about the draft, especially when it's football season. When it's draft time, when it's April, I'll talk about it reluctantly, but I'll talk about it, do the best I can. But when it's September, I don't want to talk about the NFL draft. All right, let's see. Christopher Wiles moved the team to Raleigh because that's going to change anything. I guess the Canes have been winning, but it's not like they're winning the Stanley Cup yet. It's still a North Carolina professional sports team. They do have a Stanley Cup though, so good for them. but move the team to Raleigh. No. All right, that's it. That's it, man. I'm not saying that's it for the season, but that's it for the show where Derrick Brown, he's out potentially for the season. I believe it's going to be the season. It just does not look like this is a team based off of one weekend that will be in contention for him to come back and for it to make sense. His contract does not kick in until next year. Just let him get healthy, bring him back a year from now, and hopefully Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, if they're still here, who knows? David Tepper might go ahead and just get rid of them after one season. Hopefully they can get things to be a better roster whenever Derrick Brown comes back. But we still have 16 more games here in Carolina. There's still a whole season to be played. We will find out what they're able to do, but this is definitely going to hurt them defensively. A defense that was already going to be terrible just got a little bit worse, maybe a lot worse, with Derrick Brown out for the rest of the season, potentially. I think that will be the case, but potentially based off the reporting from the NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. But it's going to wrap up this emergency episode of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where I will be answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions once again this week. So either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, at least try, be whole. And as always, and we need to do it more now than ever, keep pounding.